Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Tuesday, December 17th. It's Alissa Coram here, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ed Carson, who always brings some good stocks to talk about.
All right. Yes, Allie. I would like to talk about Fortinet, Insulet, and Embraer.
Okay, we'll take a look at those stocks, but first, let's analyze the major indexes, starting with a look at the NASDAQ composite, down about 0.3% on the day. The S&P 500 was off 0.4%. The Dow down 0.6% today, coming down to that 50-day, and then the Russell 2000 down 1.1% on the day, getting close to its 50-day moving average. But let's start with your thoughts on the NASDAQ. We did close off lows and above 20,000.
Yeah, I mean, the NASDAQ still looks great. And a lot of that obviously reflects the mega caps. A lot of the mega caps came down today. Tesla did not. But generally, we've seen a number of stocks, Tesla, Google, Broadcom, really push on the NASDAQ. So this looks great. You can see the relative strength line really outperforming in the past couple of weeks. Again, there was a shift after lagging for quite a while, but there does seem to be weakness elsewhere. I mean, it
Mhm.
seems like there's a handful of names that are going up, and if you're in them, great. Uh, but if you're not, it's a little bit of a different story. And also, it's just been tricky with new buys. I think just in
Yeah.
general, and it's more obvious when we look at these other indexes that making new buys is just a little tricky.
Exactly. And that relative strength line, of course, recently has really been picking up and now finally at new highs, crossing those July highs. So now we're really getting that relative strength here in the Nasdaq. But let's look at the S&P in comparison here lately, but still digesting some relatively tight trading ranges, holding above the 21 day, holding above 6,000 Ed.
Yeah, this looks really great too. In some ways, it looks better because it's pausing here. Maybe there could be some setups. This is really great action here. But again, the mega cap, handful of names are helping keep this steady.
hmm well, on that note, why don't we just flip on over to RSP while we're here because a very different picture for the S&P equal weight ETF, which was already on the ropes yesterday, closing slightly below the 50-day line, now down another 0.8% today. So breaking its trend over the last couple of months, where when it pulled back, it didn't undercut the 50-day. It did in that early August period where we saw a lot of volatility. But since then, the last couple of months, we've been going higher and the pullbacks have been holding the 50-day, not anymore.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a narrower rally. I mean, it's not just that it just a lot of areas are coming down, and yeah, now it's clearly below the 50-day line, and it's just this is a concern. How long can the others? When you have a divergent market, can the good stuff pull up the bad stuff, or will the bad stuff eventually pull over, or will it rotate? I mean, there's a lot of scenarios when everybody's marching higher. It's you can feel pretty confident, but this is
Right.
just a little uncertain. It's split. Is this going to revert in some way? But yeah, so something to note. There's just a lot of measures of weak breadth right now.
Absolutely. And this is definitely the lowest close here, too, since the election. And we're very close to that marked low from earlier in November. So we're right there. Will we get an undercut of that level? I think that's obviously the next area we're watching, and it's right there. So
Yeah.
okay, we also want to take a look at the Dow. Let's check in on that coming back down to its 50-day. And look at how many down days in a row here, Ed.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that managed. I think it actually closed just below the 50-day line. That's the longest losing streak since 1978. I mean, these losses haven't been amazing. I mean, they've been pretty. A lot of them have been modest, but still, day after day, and that's what like a lot of people can. You look at the Nasdaq and everything's fine, and well, why isn't my portfolio doing that? Well, maybe a few people's portfolios are doing that, but it's just hard when you see that a lot of things going there. Dow coming down to the 50-day line, and that includes they added Nvidia, and Nvidia is not really helping out
Yeah.
right now. So that's, I mean, and other areas aren't helping either. The Russell 2000 also, again, another just measure of how things are. coming down toward the 50-day line, giving up a lot of gains, not seeing a lot of fight back. It
Mm,
is it is striking to see these things come down day after day after day, and the Nasdaq's like we're right at record highs.
yeah. And it's also interesting. So you have the mega caps, most of them, not all, as you pointed out, but then you also have this pocket of really speculative growth froth. What's that all about, Ed?
Yeah, it does seem to be this concentrated froth. That some of those froth names have come off in various degrees, and you know, so it's hard to say. ARK is really helped by Tesla, but yeah, we've seen things like App Lovin, that one's come off highs. It's trying to find support. We're not sure if it will maintain that. SoundHound, that's a stock that I still have a small portion in that. That one came back up. So there's definitely names like that that have just been flying. So
Mhm.
it is really weird. There's the super high momentum stocks, a few titans, which somewhat have that momentum
Right.
meme feel to them too. And then a lot of other stocks that aren't doing particularly
Yeah.
well, not terribly, but it's also depending. If you own it and they're up 50% and it goes down a little bit, that's no big deal. It's the problem is that some of these stocks that if you try to buy them and then you buy them on strength, the market is grinding lower, you're going
Yep.
to see it's hard to have those sustain the gains, let alone expand upon them. So that makes it tricky.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there's names that are even more speculative than the ones that
Oh,
you mentioned. At least SoundHound and App both have double or triple digit.
you're right. Ionic, you're right. Some things like that.
Yeah.
Ionic, and I can't even think the other name. Qubit.
UUBT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're right. There's some stocks that are just and there's just becomes a real frenzy. Enough people can get into these things, and there is a story behind them. I mean, we saw meme stocks that don't almost have almost nothing behind them. At least there is a story, but yeah, it is really some wild action, and there is a lot of bullish sentiment. So even though while a lot of stocks going up, there still seems to be a lot of people willing to put money on very speculative names.
Yeah, it's an interesting market right now. Okay, just really quickly taking a look at QQEW, down 0.4% today, matching the Qs, but clearly a very different look here to the performance as of late for those. And then let's also check out XMMO. This is the mid cap momentum ETF, Ed, also pulling back.
Yeah, that's not a great sign either because you could say, oh well, RSP, these others, it's less tech. It's like I mean, this isn't necessarily all tech, but these are like growth momentum plays, and yeah, underlying there's not. This was doing really well, and it just hasn't. You can see there is a tenor. This shows you that clearly the market's struggling, and not just areas that okay, the Dow, yeah, you sort of expect it to lag. Okay, small caps, well, they rise and fall more than others. But XMMO, that coming off, not a good sign.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're coming down to some key areas here for a lot of these indexes and ETFs that we like to take a look at. So, will we get a bounce or will we break further? I guess we'll have to find out in the coming days.
And
So,
I forgot all about it, but the Fed has a meeting
oh yeah,
announcement
that
tomorrow.
little thing.
That little thing, and look, are people expecting a rate cut, but then probably not, price signaling not much happening after that, sort of a semi-hawkish wrapper to a Fed rate cut. So we'll see that, but that's clearly going to be something that will move markets, even if it comes right in line of expectations. Sometimes markets decide to really swing, so definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. So, with that being said, if we could see some volatility either direction, depending on how the market feels like reacting to that news, it could either be a time to, because you have these different scenarios. Okay. Do you need to get more defensive? Or, okay, now let's switch gears here and get more offensive. Of course, look at the stocks in your portfolio. How are they acting? Are they triggering sell signals? Or in your screens, the setups that you're watching, are you seeing setups, are you seeing stocks that are actionable? Those are some clues, right, Ed?
And just look at these indexes, just XMMO as an example. A strong day, you get back above the 21-day line, you break the trend line. Oh, that looks so bullish. It was testing the 10-week line. Have a bad day, it goes right then. So it's like, we're just talking about a relatively small move on either direction,
Yeah.
and it would completely change the tenor of the market.
Wow. Now you're making tomorrow sound all that more exciting, Ed. So can't wait. All right, let's go to some stocks. Let's check out Fortinet. We've been seeing some interesting action in this security software group. CrowdStrike looking more interesting lately, and some tight action here in Fortinet, Ed, right under that century mark.
Yeah, after a nice run up, it's held that gains. It's if at the end of this week it would have a flat base at the end, if it didn't move higher, I think people could treat this area of that 159 just above the 100 level as a place to enter if they wanted. I mean, you could even do it a little earlier in that little breaking the trend line, um, but it's all pretty close. So that's been
Mhm,
strong action. We've seen revenue growth pick up again a little bit, earnings growth pick up. That's going to slow down again, but there was sort of the growth momentum has picked up. And again, the numbers are going to get tougher here, but nice to see that kind of acceleration. As you say, there seem to be a number of cybersecurity names that are doing pretty well, and this is right around in there.
mhm. It sure is. I like how it's tightening up relative to itself. Okay, let's go to PODD. This is Insulet in the medical products group. Down today, but off lows, down less than 1%. Closing, though, below the 21-day line. This had a nice move after earnings, and even some may have considered buying with that bounce off of the 21-day line. This was on 1210. It gained 3.7% that day. So it is now below that level. Is this an expectation breaker here, Ed, or is this still a stock that you view is setting up?
I think it's still potentially setting up. The problem is that if you bought, you're down a fair amount, and it seems like broke some key levels. It seems like you would have wanted to uh, you know, cut somewhat. Understandably, it did bounce. Okay, and so maybe this will work out. And if you look on a weekly chart, maybe this could even find support at the 10-week lines. But it's just,
Mhm.
and it does have this tight action that we had. So even though there's been some up and downs, there's some tight pattern, a modest gain, and that tight pattern expands. So it does still look okay. The problem is that this is just such a tricky market. That thing is because it showed some strength and then it just couldn't hold that, but it really hasn't done anything particularly wrong, but it's just in this market that's difficult to play. And so I'm still watching this. I'm glad I didn't play it because it would have been a really tough decision today to cut some of that. And because you could see a serious loss if we go, there's not a whole lot of support. If it goes underneath tomorrow's lows, then maybe the 50-day line would be the next support, and then at
Mhm.
that point you'd be significantly down, even though the stock may still end up working out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, Ed, about looking for potential support on these weekly charts at the 10-week line that could provide traders buying opportunities if we see some bounces there. So again, it's Tuesday. We've got the Fed meeting tomorrow. We'll have to see how the rest of the week shakes out, but a setup to keep in mind, no doubt. And let's talk about ERJ, if I can type here. It's testing support at the 10-week line here. Underneath, though, the breakout area from the flat base, but above what some would consider an early entry within the base, Ed.
Yeah, this is interesting because it's got the buy point, a downward sloping trend line. It's got the 50-day line. A lot of things that it could all of a sudden look technically great. And but oh boy, it wouldn't take much to go, undercut there. Definitely be well below the buy point if it went through the 50-day line decisively, and below the early entry too. This has
Mhm.
shown strong growth. Growth is supposed to slow down next year, so there is that. But this is one that maybe buying off the 50-day line has been a way to be too good because it does come down sometimes. And so this is a combination. However you like to buy a stock, it seems like this would offer an opportunity if you showed any strength because there'd be the 50-day, the buy point, and a trend line. So whatever kind of trader you are, it seems like this would offer you something. And it's just a little diversity. I will say aerospace names have come under a little bit of pressure. It seems like this week or
Mhm.
last few days.
Mm,
Again, we're just seeing some of that weakness come down
right.
lately, but this has been a strong performer. It's finding nice support here, and so if it shows strength, it could definitely be actionable. But I definitely think people should wait for that little bit of strength, in
Yeah.
this situation.
And if you want another data point about how the market is favoring, it seems, the more speculative stocks, look at what's on the top of this RS list. You have four stocks with RS of 99. Of course, we know that's like over a year, but look at the EPS, all of terrible fundamentals for these companies, but they're all showing top notch relative strength. There's a look at Rocket Lab. It's been a rocket ship. Lunar, this has gone to the moon, I guess, if you're talking about from the recent lows earlier this fall, Ed. So yeah, this to me screams speculative market.
Yeah, you're right. In some ways, it's almost easier when there's no fundamentals because investors won't even look for it. It's like almost when they have some fundamentals and they're not that great, it's like, oh, that's not that great, but it's all fine. That's a great point about how it's just these high RS, low EPS names.
Yeah, interesting, interesting, interesting there. Okay, and that is it for today, everyone. Ed, any final thoughts to leave us with ahead of the
Uh,
Fed meeting tomorrow?
no, no, the Fed meeting will be really interesting. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Appreciate it as always. And be sure to keep tabs on investors.com tomorrow. Jed and our econ reporter, Jed, what a great duo, right? Ed and Jed to be manning our updates on the Fed. We've got a live document, a live report that will be on the site. So make sure to follow for those live updates. And that is it from us for today. But we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We will see you there. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close. But you also have the swing trader status update today at 5 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. And then you can stream the recording at investors.com/videos or listen wherever you get your podcasts. So actually, no, that one we don't have on podcast yet. Maybe that'll be coming soon. Maybe. But anyway, you could check that out at investors.com/videos. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next time.